I'm a BK brother. My own Madison Square, catch me at the fight.
Conor McGregor!
Sensational. From New York City, right, Cam?
You're damn right. Big shot, Tyron Woodley! Wow!
What a night, ladies and gentlemen!
New York City!
Oh yes, the dream has finally been realised. The UFC has arrived in NYC. For the biggest pay-per-view event in its history, UFC 205 will take over Madison Square Garden, New York, bringing with it some of the biggest names in MMA. And with such a box office attraction, it is only fitting we give it the Inside the Octagon special treatment. That means we are putting together 5 shows breaking down all the key matchups, including the best of the prelims and a look at every single fight on the monumental main card. In this show, we get to grips with the main event. So after his redemptive win over Nate Diaz at UFC 202, Conor McGregor is back in the octagon, looking to become the first athlete in history to hold 2 UFC World Championships consecutively. But to do so, he must get past the reigning, defending UFC lightweight champion, Eddie Alvarez, who is determined to hold on to his belt after taking it from Rafael dos Anjos in the most dramatic fashion. So let's get straight into the facts and the stats then, Dan. 2 champions, the featherweight champion and, of course, the lightweight champion. That belt up for grabs. Physically, very similar, apart from, of course, the reach.
A massive reach advantage for Conor, which is obviously surprising him coming up from featherweight. He does have the stature for this weight class, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
I do feel that lightweight is going to be a much more suitable weight class for him, and that's a welterweight reach, so that's going to be an advantage for most of these fights in this division.
The former 2-time lightweight world champion. So Eddie Alvarez has had a long and storied career. We've both enjoyed watching him come up, and it was a big question whether he was actually going to make it to the UFC. Finally did, and he has realised his dream of becoming the champion. Conor McGregor stood post-fight interview at Cage Warriors after getting the lightweight title, saying, "I'm going to do this at the UFC."
And he's so close.
And he is so close, and the other guy really wants to hold on to the belt. So much to look at here, Dan.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor.
Yes.
Alvarez says about him, he's only got a left hand.
Okay.
McGregor says about Alvarez, he's only got a right hand. I'm guessing we're going to find out a little bit more, though.
Yes, yeah, there's a bit more to both fights, as you can imagine. I mean, for Conor, we do know about his left hand. We do know that that is a real dominant, a dominant weapon in all of his fights. But it's how he uses it, it's how he sets it up. Now, he always commands the octagon very well. You can see this in the rematch with Nate Diaz, how he immediately takes the centre, working those low kicks, chopping away at that front leg, which is going to be useful for Alvarez, who's got great footwork. If you can start wearing that front leg down, if you can start controlling that range with those long kicks that are going to not only keep Eddie Alvarez on the outside, but really emphasise that reach advantage that Conor's got, because, you know, there are several lines of defence here. This is also going to be another important line of defence in his takedowns. Great takedown defence against Dennis Siver there. Chad Mendes was a different story. He gets taken down straight away here. This is 2 takedowns actually counted on the stats for this fight. He stands straight up in a scramble, and this is the takedown in defence, but he does get taken down twice more in this round. So there are questions about whether he's going to be able to defend Alvarez's takedowns. That is a question that we're going to have to wait and see to be answered in that first round. If he does defend those takedowns, though, this is what we can expect. Him backing Alvarez up against the fence and picking him apart with that long range and picking his shots with that left hand. As we talked about the left hand, he was a bit more economical and a bit more concise with the Nate Diaz fight. You can see he wasn't overcommitting to it from lessons that he learned in his previous fight. Whereas if you watch him against Brandao, Mendes and Siver, you can see how he starts to sweep people around to this side of the octagon. So he closes the door, which you would normally want to leave open if you're a left-handed fighter. He pushes people across the octagon and punches across them. We've spoke about this several times before. Now, I have a theory as to why this happens, and I'm going to use this shot here to show you why. Now, let's just take a look at this door here that's been left open. Now, if you're a left-handed fighter, if your power hand is your left hand, you want people to circle towards that so they can walk onto it.
Yeah.
Because Conor really overextends on his punch. I mean, look at this. His left shoulder is over his right knee at this point. He's really overextended. if this door's not closed, if he doesn't shut this part of the octagon off and Alvarez can scoot around to this side, or in fact anybody that he's fighting, if this left hand goes whistling past the chin and doesn't land, you can see how exposed he is on this backside. So if I'm in Alvarez's camp, if I'm Mark Henry, I'm looking at this and I'm going, I've got to keep that door open. If Alvarez gets backed up against the fence, he has to maintain this opening here so Conor doesn't commit 100% to that left hand, because that's when he's the most dangerous. It's just something I've been thinking about. It's a very unusual way to use the left hand. Most people, as I say, would try and get you to circle onto it. But in this circumstance, Conor uses it so beautifully in this way.
But he doesn't always commit 100%, does he?
Not always.
He does a 75% when the guy is kind of lined up in front of him.
Exactly, like he did against Nate Diaz in the rematch. And you could see, I mean, he dropped Nate, 3 times in the second round, but they were all very measured, hit him on the chin and retract. There was never this overextension where he throws in that he did against Mendes. And the other guys that he's knocked out, like I said, Brandao and Siva, same thing again. He really overextends and reaches. And I think that because he knows he's closed that door, he knows he's not exposed to that side, so he can commit 100%.
Yeah.
So if I'm Alvarez, I'm trying to take that advantage away from him and try and keep that door open.
OK. Eddie Alvarez, the underground king. As we said in the lead-up to that, a long and storied career, great boxing.
Yep.
What heart. Proved time and time again that he can challenge over 5 rounds.
Yes.
Bell to bell. Unquestionable in the fights. Obviously, great wrestling as well.
Mm-hmm. And great footwork as well. This is the first thing I want to talk about with Eddie Alvarez is his footwork, as well as his neck warm-up. So look at this. Look how he immediately cuts this angle on RDA. So he's taken into account that this is the direction to go. He's moving away from the left hand. He's going to have to reverse engineer this against McGregor, like I said, because he wants to be circling the opposite way if he gets backed up. The inside low kick's going to be very effective against McGregor with them having such a long stance. And then if ever he gets an opportunity to bull him up against the fence and to wear on him with his wrestling, this is going to be a really useful game plan. He likes that outside reap. He used it against Pettis as well. And in this circumstance, he used it just to get the legs together so he could get the lift. With Pettis, it was all about grinding him up against the fence. It was all about using a smothering wrestling game plan. And if he does break, if he does get space, this is his time to really throw with commitment, because when Conor's got his back up against the fence, he doesn't have that movement that he wants. Now, when Eddie Alvarez is up against the fence, it's not ideal for him, and this is really where Conor's going to want him. But he does have this. Bang. He's always got that one-shot knockout power, which you've got to watch out for. Now in this circumstance, RDA took it so well. I mean, how he managed to stay standing after that shot, and the following shots that landed afterwards was really a statement to his toughness. But you can see Eddie Alvarez got his attention, and what I want to talk about is how this goes down. So he throws the right hand a couple of times and cracks him. But now look how he gets RDA to step across. And we're going to see it better from a different angle. But he actually gets him to step across, so he's moving in the direction that he wants to land that land that right hand. We see it much better on the next angle here. But then afterwards, as you can see, he just pours on the pressure. And this is something that it's the Alvarez avalanche. It's something that he's known for in all of his fights. When he sees you hurt, he's got the conditioning to keep pouring that pressure on. And he's throwing 100% in all of these shots. And will continue this until you're down, until you're out of the fight. OK, here we go. So this is the replay that I was talking about, which really shows you what he was trying to achieve here. It's beautiful footwork, and this is, again, I'm sure, working with Mark Henry, who is a master at footwork, as we've seen with him working with Frankie Edgar. So in this circumstance here, he's got his foot on the outside. Now, RDA, to an extent, has closed this doorway here, but with Eddie having his foot on the outside, it does give him this option to move away here. Now, RDA is just trying to keep him up against the fence. So what Alvarez is going to do, he's going to move this foot to the inside, which is going to get a reaction out of RDA, which is a favourable reaction in this circumstance. So watch what happens. Alvarez is going to lift his foot and he's going to move it to the inside, which then gives RDA the impression that Alvarez is moving in this direction. So then he's going to want to step across and he's going to want to cut that angle off immediately to control him up against the fence. So RDA is then going to move his front foot and he's going to step across to cut that angle. But watch, as soon as his foot lands, Alvarez is moving forward, he places his foot on the outside, and you know what's coming. The big right hook around the side, boom.
He's made up a lot of ground as well with these shots.
It's beautiful. Look at that. I mean, it's perfect because he's also got RDA standing on a tightrope. I mean, that's a very narrow stance that he's got there, which means that he's not got great balance.
Yeah.
Alvarez has placed his foot on the outside, which puts him in a very powerful position. He's got purchase on that back foot as well, which means he can really turn his body. And because RDA, let me get rid of all that, because RDA has already stepped in this direction, his momentum is moving towards the punch that he's being hit with, which is perfect for Eddie Alvarez. It was really nice timing, and it was understanding how, as he steps, he's going to get the reaction from his opponent. So he's very good at reading his opponent. Even when he's backed up against the fence, he's good at playing those angles, which is going to be key against McGregor. And as I said, you know, he cracks him with that. RDA somehow managed to stay on his feet, and then Alvarez just pours on. It's the avalanche. He just comes forward, throws everything he's got. He did it with Cowboy in the first round as well when he caught him and rocked him in the clinch. And that's something that McGregor's got to watch out for, because if he shows any kind of weakness, if he starts to slow down, if he gets clipped with the shot, he knows that Alvarez is going to start pouring on that pressure, and that may be something he's not able to recover from if he is tired.
But Alvarez does have that primal instinct, as you were referring to, where he starts shooting from the hip a little bit. We spoke about this when we were covering Andrei Arlovski. Sort of loses his mind and gets in the moment. Is that something that Conor is going to capitalise on?
It certainly could. And with the reach advantage, it's something else that comes into play, because if Alvarez does start shooting from the hip, he does have to stand very close to Conor, which means he needs him backed up against the fence. Another thing that Alvarez does use is that sprint forward, which it could expose him to Conor. Melendez caught him a couple of times with some good shots in that, and Conor's got a very fast step-back left hand, as we've seen with his left hand. We know he's got power in that, but he's also very good at creating space to land it, which I'll show you in a second.
Yeah, actually, I know that Alvarez's camp they call it the rock back and left hand, so they're very aware of all of these things. So it'd be interesting to see the strategy. So we're going to take a look at the questions that you guys have very kindly sent over. I'm going to go down here. That is from Carlos Danger.
Nice.
I love these Twitter handles.
I hope Danger's his middle name.
Yeah. How important is McGregor's range, control and spatial awareness in avoiding these bombs from Alvarez?
It's a great point. He has to maintain that range. He has to maintain that distance, which is why the long kicks are going to come into play in that first round, controlling the octagon space and making sure that he's got the majority of the octagon behind him as well for him to move into if he needs it. He can't be so preoccupied with pushing Alvarez, because Alvarez does have that sprint forward, that aggressive, almost like the Vitor Belfort flurry.
Right.
That's something that McGregor's got to watch out for, but it's also something he may see an opportunity in. And what I'm talking about is this here. So, as we've seen with Eddie Alvarez, we saw it in the Melendez fight a few times. We've got him sprinting forward here. He runs forward with a burst of about 3 punches. But then Melendez starts to catch him. He's catching him with an upwards elbow here that stops him, catch him with the right hand. And the next one, he catches him with the up elbow, over elbow, which again is beautiful. Stops Alvarez in his tracks, backs him up against the fence, which is perfect for Conor if he can catch him as he's running in. Now watch this. I'm just going to play that back for you because it's very, very quick. And we've seen it before. We've seen it in the Aldo fight, which we're gonna watch in a second. But against Siva, when he got Siva backed up against the fence, watch him as he sprints forward. It's the same punch he uses against Alvarez. He drops against Aldo. He drops back and he catches him on the way in with that left hand, which obviously led to the finish with Siva, where he backed him up against the fence again, sweeps him away from the left hand so he can punch across him. And here we go against Aldo. He runs in, watch him drop back, create space for that left hand. And in my opinion, he actually got a bit caught up here with his feet. He doesn't create as much space as he could have done, because you can see he's quite square.
Yeah.
He kind of almost crunches himself up to land the punch.
His legs almost fully extended there.
Exactly. Whereas with Alvarez, as Alvarez rushes forward, if he can create that space and catch him with that left hand, it's either going to stop Alvarez in his tracks, it's going to knock him off his feet, or it's going to open up another opportunity to catch him with something. Yeah. It's also going to discourage Alvarez from rushing forward, which is going to be favourable for Conor, because then he is able to control the octagon much better, keep Alvarez backed up against the fence where he can start picking at him with that 5-inch reach advantage. Yeah,
well, I was lucky enough to be out at SBG just a couple of weeks ago.
Lucky boy.
Yeah, just to see these guys sparring is quite special. And one of the things that Conor's always said about orthodox fighters that are tough and come forward is he's made a career. His bread and butter is slipping that right hand or moving away from that right hand, whether he's going forwards or backwards.
Yep.
and catching his opponent. And he's really just funneled it down to that's all he's got to watch out for with Alvarez, which we all know there's more to it than that. But, right, we had plenty of Twitter questions, so we need to pick another one. There we go. Let's go top right this time. So, Matty Gunner. In Conor's last 2 fights, he's dipped at around the 8-minute mark. Would you say that this is more of a physical or mental issue? A lot of people are talking about this, and Alvarez himself has said, I'm going to get this done, or something under the 9-minute mark. What do you think?
Well, we have a difference of opinion on this. We've discussed this over and over again. Johnny G's and I get into it sometimes. I go based on what I've seen. Now, at featherweight, I've seen McGregor fade in the second round against Mendes. I saw that. I saw it with my own eyes. I feel like he did fade.
Is this where I interject as a debate? Because I think he was a little injured. But anyway, carry on.
OK. And then when he fought at welterweight against Nate Diaz, obviously we saw him fade in the first fight. He paid for it because he shot a panic takedown in the second fight.
He's fighting a guy who's a lot heavier.
But true, but this is a part of my point. You see, when he was fighting at featherweight, he was cut into a weight class that I don't think suited him. When he was fighting at welterweight, he was bulking up to a weight class that I don't think suited him. So the conditioning issues may be at the extremities of his weight.
Right.
If he's fighting at 155, if he's fighting at lightweight, that might be a far more comfortable weight class and far more suitable for his conditioning, for his build, which means that we may not see those issues going into this fight. But I certainly feel like we've seen them at featherweight and at welterweight. So it is a question that's got to be asked.
Sure.
You know?
And I think another thing from being out with SBG, they were talking about science. Now, science isn't something that we've gotten to, you know, at a really high level in mixed martial arts, because it's still a baby sport, and McGregor's camp have a lot more resources available to them, if you like. So they, every step of the way, have been measuring stuff, measuring blood, air, and all sorts of other things, I'm sure. Nothing is guesswork. Everything is factored on the scientific data. And that's allowing Conor to push when he can push and pull back. So what he's definitely doing is he's addressed it. And I think he even said, I went from being a 2-round fighter against Diaz in a short period of time to, you know, being the full fight.
Yeah.
What has he done in between times? Is it enough? We shall see. But I think they've got it covered.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. I mean, you'll know better because you've been in the camp. But based on what I've seen him fade at featherweight. I've seen him fade at welterweight. I've seen Alvarez fight hard for 5-5s at lightweight.
Yeah.
I know he can do it.
No doubt. There's no doubt about Alvarez.
And he's that workhorse mentality. He will just continue to grind and grind. Whereas McGregor is a very, very powerful individual. And because of that power, because of that investment in those techniques that he knows wins in the fight early on in the game, he can fade. It does have a taxation on his cardio, like we spoke about before. Let me show you this next playlist. So, Alvarez, the first thing he's got to do is give movement. He's got to be mobile. Now, you can see here against Pettis, he's moving away from the left hand, which is fine if he's out in the centre of the octagon. This is also going to make McGregor work, which, in my opinion, if I was in Alvarez's camp, I would be using that as part of my game plan. I would also be using this. Any opportunity I've got to smash him up against the fence, wear on him, grind him, just drive him into the fence and beat him up a little bit, make it uncomfortable, is going to tax on his cardio. It's going to certainly answer that question of what happens if we go, past the second round. Smothering his kicks is also useful as well. Now, we saw Mendes take him down a couple of times with really nice takedowns, and there seems to be less resistance as the fight went on. Now, when the second round came about and Mendes was obviously tired, that's when McGregor started to stuff takedowns. I think he stuffed 2 of 3 in the second round. But here we see again, this is the rematch with Nate Diaz. Backed up again, runs this way. This is something else I want to talk about. And the reason I want to talk about it is because as he does it here, Nate Diaz being a southpaw already, as he runs, you can see him, he got caught with that, with a long Stockton slap left hook.
Yeah. Right?
Now, the reason he wasn't hurt by this is because of the range, because as he runs out of the way, that's just a reach. That's a long... I mean, that hand is behind Nate Diaz as he's throwing it. There's no power in that. It's literally just a check.
Yeah.
He's just letting him know that he knows which way he's moving. They were fingers. That was an open palm there that landed. You can see. There was no intention of landing anything with power in there.
Right.
But that is something that McGregor does consistently. Now, watch this. Watch this. This is a beautiful little tactic that Alvarez uses. Here we go. So, he's got Pettis backed up against the fence here. Now, as you can see, Alvarez is an orthodox fighter. I'm just going to skip it back. So here we go. Now, look at all that space that Pettis has to work with. That is a massive amount of octagon space to move into. And given the fact that Alvarez is an orthodox fighter, he's out of range to land that right hand. But he does this. It's a beautiful step through that he does. So he's going to throw the right hand to get himself into range. Then he brings his back foot forward and switches. So now his back foot becomes his front foot. Now he's a southpaw fighter.
Right.
He's cut this angle off. He knows that Pettis is moving in that direction. And what's he got? His big, powerful right hand, which he then turns into a lead right hook. Doesn't catch him cleanly with it, but the footwork is there. So this is something else that he's going to be watching out for. As McGregor is circling away, he's going to look to step through with that punch.
Very fluid.
And it's a beautiful
There's
move.
no beat that you miss when you switch it up.
Not at all. And he does it again here. He switches. He's already in that stance. And this is the other thing I talked about. If he lands a good, clean shot, he pours the pressure on. Now, fair play to Cowboy for surviving this, but there was a couple of shots there that landed on the temple and did hurt him. And this is the avalanche I was talking about. And this is towards the end of the fight. This is after he's probably been going at RDA for about 30 seconds now. Swinging from the hip, full power in every punch, giving it everything he's got. But when he can feel the victories right in his hand, he's going to chase it, and he has the cardio to back it up. It's not a question for him because he's a well-conditioned athlete that's been doing this a long time. He's done 5.5s. He knows he can do it. So there's not that hesitation of, I've got him hurt, I've got to pick my shots. I've got to be careful because I don't want to burn myself out. Yeah. If he lands a clean shot, the instinct comes out, and then he just takes over. And yeah, he does swing from the hips, but if one of those shots hits you, you're gonna go down. And if McGregor slows down, if McGregor gets backed up against the fence and becomes vulnerable to that, that's a dangerous Eddie Alvarez to fight right there.
Yeah, and Alvarez, Mark Henry have brought in a fighter that helped Jose Aldo prepare for Conor McGregor. Jonas Speed is a Brazilian fighter, I think a jungle fight featherweight champion. Okay. So really interesting guy to have had. Now that guy's prepared twice in the form of McGregor, if you like. Right. Let's hope it goes a bit better for Alvarez's camp, if indeed you're in that corner. This is brilliant. History could well be made here for McGregor, unprecedented. But of course, for Alvarez, the dream will continue if he gets the victory.
Yes, yeah. And it'll be the biggest win of his career by far. I mean, this will launch him. There's no more underground king moniker after this fight. If he beats McGregor, he's no longer underground. I mean, he's not now. He's the world champion. But this is really going to solidify him in the mainstream. And there's a lot of pressure on both sides, which is what makes this so fascinating. I'm really excited for it.
Great stuff. Well, that's all from us. Remember to get involved in the comments section below and on Twitter using the hashtag Inside The Octagon. In our next instalment, we analyse the co-main event as the welterweight champion Tyron Woodley looks to make his first title defence by halting the meteoric rise of the Wonder Boy, Stephen Thompson. So remember to check out that and all of our other shows before the first bell rings on November 12th. It's going to be a night to remember in the city that never sleeps. From Dan and I, we'll see you next time.